In the name of God, we want to explain other phonological rules, which is the other allophone of re till re in Farsi is the voiced flap re, which appears in the environment between vowels. Okay, at the previous session we had the divorced form of trill re at the end of the word, but here other allophone of trill re, which is voiced flap re, which appears at the environment between vowels. This requires the rule in 36. R flapping is the name of that rules, which trill re becomes flap re. At the previous rule we had the R devoicing. These are the name of that rule. Here we have the rule of R flapping in Farsi. Trill re becomes to flap between two vowels. As I told you, this sign show vowel. I repeat it again. The other allophone of re in Farsi. One point which I should explain is that when we want to show the input of the data, we show them in this way. We put two slashes in both sides of that sound. But when we want to show its structural change, its phonetical representation, we use the square bracket at the both sides of that sound. Therefore, it is re which comes in this situation before the row, and this flap re comes after the this arrow. This re turns to becomes this trill re becomes this flap re, which appears in the environment between two vowels, which its name. The name of this rule is R flapping, which trill re, which we show them in this way, becomes flap re. After the slash we show its environment. When two vowel, as I told you, this means vowel. When it's and this line show the position of that sound. For example, here this line is the position of trill re, which becomes flap. We can now take the underlying representation of. Here we want to show you and explain you this rule according to one example, which is Shirini. This trill mean pastry. This trill re comes between two vowels, e. Shirini, and derive the phonetic form in derivation. At first we have underlying representation. I repeat it again. For at the first step of derivation, we have underlying representation. It means that the input of that sound, the raw form of that sound, when no rules apply on this, which we show it in this way. At first we have just one slash, and after that we have the word boundary symbol. After that we have that word, and after the word we have the symbol of the word boundary and a slash. For showing the underlying representation, we use two slashes and two symbol of boundary of the word at both sides of that word. And after that we have we apply the rule of 35, which is flapping of the word, which is 36, not 35. which is flapping. And after that, after applying this rule, we have phonetic representation. For the phonetic representation, we have two square bracket and two symbol of word boundary at the both sides of that word, which here we have the flap ray instead of trail ray. And we called all of these steps as a derivation. Let us now consider the form parameter. Parameter means parameter. Here in parameter, we have both the voiced ray and the flap ray. We have two environments which can change the tail ray to flap and to the voiced. This form needs to have both rules 34 and 36 apply. The derivation is given in 38. Okay, here at the in the 37 and 35, we just had the derivation of just one rule. We show you the derivation of just one rule, but here we have two rules. At first we have parameter, which at the end of the word and between two vowels we have the trail ray without any change and without applying any rule, which we called it as underlying representation. We have the raw form of the word without any rule which applied upon it, which we show it in this way. At first we have parameter, which between two vowels at the end of the word we have trail ray. First, the rule of 34, which is the voicing of the trail ray at the end of the word, apply on this word, which this ray devoiced and the end of the word. And after that, the rule of the flapping of trail ray between two vowels apply to this word, which we have the flap form of this ray. And for the phonetic representation, after applying these two rules, we have parameter, which here we have the flap ray, and here we have the devoiced ray at the end of the word. Sometimes the order of applying this rule is important, and one rule apply on the word, and after that other rules apply on that rule. But here there isn't any difference between two rules. The order of the rule is not important, and at first we can have the flap rule and then we have the devoiced rule, or the devoiced rule, and after that the rule of flapping. The order here, the order of the applying of the rule is not important, but sometimes it is important because one rule apply on the word and it's create an environment for applying other rules. But here the order of the rule is not important, and instead of the voicing of ray, we can have the flapping of ray at first, and then we have the devoicing of the ray. In the derivation of 13.8, the two rules means devoicing and flapping of trail ray. The two rules could apply in either order. It is not important. They can comes in either order. The results are the same. In derivation of 38, the two rules could apply in either order. The results are the same. In subsequent chapters, we will see examples where the order of the application makes a difference to the outcomes. Okay, sometimes the order of the application of the rule is important because it changes the outcome. It makes a differences to the outcome. But here, the order of the rule is not important. Okay, here we repeat the point which I told you in the previous session. In complex derivation, like here, involving several rules, here we have two rules. Each line between the underlying and phonetic representation shows the result of applying of the rule of that line to line immediately above. We show each rule in just one line, in separate line. Here we have just one line. In another line we have other rules. If we had about 3 or 4 rules, we show them in a separate line, which may have resulted from the application of previous rules. Okay. If you had any question about this type of rule and this type of generative rule, please ask me. You should look at them many times. Other common types of phonological processes. Here I want to explain the phonological processes. Some phonological processes occur commonly enough to have acquired descriptive names. Some phonological processes occur commonly enough to have acquired descriptive name. In analyzing the exercises, it is always best to look for such processes first before proposing a rule of a completely different nature. We discuss some of these processes in this section. As I told you, I introduced you a rule in previous session, like these rules. Sometimes these rules have their special name, and we should call them as their name, by their name. One of these phonological processes is assimilation. Please pay attention to this explanation, because sometimes some of you may use these phonological rules for your thesis, and learning them is very important. One of these phonological rules is assimilation. Please pay attention to my explanation. In assimilation, a sound changes to become more like a nearby sound. In assimilation, a sound changes to become more like a nearby sound. One sound change and one to be similar to its nearby sound. For example, in French, the data of 5, which we read them, the uvular fricative is realized as a voiceless ch, following a voiceless sound. Because we have the voiceless sound, it becomes voiceless, and it becomes similar to its nearby sound. A similar example occurs with the English plural morphemes. In English plural morphemes, we have assimilation, which it pronounced se in words like dogs and cows. Why? Because we have the voiced consonant g. Okay, and here we have the plural form of se, and because we have here the voiced sound, this sound become voiced and become similar to its nearby sound, and we pronounce it as dogs. And here we have glide, and this sound becomes voiced like that, glide, and cows. In other words, cats. The plural morpheme has been devoiced to se, because t is voiceless. Cats. In assimilation to the voiceless t which precede it. Okay, we have the assimilation, which in assimilation a sound changes and want to become similar to its nearby sounds, like the plural form of the plural phoneme of say in English. Sometimes we pronounce it as ze, and sometimes we pronounce it as se. When it comes after the voiced sound like ge, like the glide and approximate of we, it becomes the voiced sound, and we pronounce it as voice sound, and we say that dogs, and it turned to z because it wants to be similar to its nearby and nearby sound. In both the French and English cases, we say that a sound assimilates in voicing to what precedes. For more example, you can see this part. The assimilation need not be to an immediately adjacent sound. Sometimes two words which become similar to each other, they are not nearby each other, and they are not adjacent to each other, like these two sounds which are adjacent to each other. Sometimes the sounds which changes, they are not nearby each other and they are not adjacent. A very common type of this type of assimilation is vowel harmony. Vowel harmony is another phonological processes, which is one kind of assimilation. By this difference, that in vowel harmony, a vowel takes on some characteristics of a nearby vowel regardless of intervening consonant. They are not adjacent to each other, and sometimes two or one or more consonants are between them, between that two vowels with change. I repeat it again. In assimilation, need not to be an immediately adjacent sound. A very common type of assimilation which happens between the non-adjacent sound is vowel harmony, by which a vowel takes on some characteristics of a nearby vowel regardless of the intervening consonants. For example, in Hungarian, the suffix meaning from beside has two forms. Okay, I think it is not very clear. I want to give you some example in Persian. In Persian, in Farsi, we have the prefix b, and we have the root of the word for go, which is ro, raftan, which we have its root as a ro. Here we have the underlying representation of that sound. At first I draw a slash, and after that I draw a word boundary symbol and the prefix of b and the root ro, and after that I draw another the symbol the word boundary and the slash, which this beru it's changed to buru because of the vowel harmony which happened between these two vowels. Here we have the re consonant between these two vowels. We have ro, and here we have b. But when this b added to this ro, this prefix added to this root, this vowel, because of that vowel, it becomes similar to this vowel, and a becomes o in this environment, which we have, which this show the syllable boundary, and we have the consonant. It comes at the end of the syllable, which we show it in this way. After that we have consonant, which is re, and after that we have vowel, which is o. It is one kind of vowel harmony, which one sound, which one vowel turns to other vowel because of other vowel which exist in that word, and they are not adjacent to each other, and we call it as vowel harmony, which is one kind of assimilation. I hope that you learned it. You can search this phonology processes in the Google Scholar or internet. You can search the vowel harmony in Arabic, for example, and you can see the vowel harmony in the Arabic data or assimilation in Arabic. There are so many articles about assimilation and vowel harmony in Arabic. You can search these rules in internet, and you can see its article to better understand of that rules. Okay, then we had the assimilation, which in assimilation we had as in assimilation we told you that one sound changes to other sounds, one too similar to its adjacent sounds, like plural say in English, which sometimes we pronounce it as ze and sometimes we pronounce it as se because of its adjacent sound. Other type of assimilation which happen between two non-adjacent sounds, which non-adjacent, for example, vowel, which we call it as vowel harmony. Please read the article about the assimilation, about the vowel harmony in your language to learn them better. About the dissimilation, it is another type of phonological rules. Dissimilation is the opposite of assimilation. Dissimilation is the opposite of assimilation. In dissimilation, a sound becomes less like a neighboring sound. In dissimilation, a sound becomes less like a neighboring sound. It is exactly opposite of assimilation. In assimilation, a sound turn to become similar to its neighboring sound, but here the sound changed to want to be similar to its adjacent sound. For example, in modern Greek, the passive suffix thick, when we have this line and after that we have sound, we consider it as suffix, which this becomes thick after a fricative, as shown in 39. Here we can see this data. Here we have sick. At first we have this suffix is sick, but when we comes after the plosive sounds like te, like se, which is fricative, and he, which is fricative, fe, which is fricative, it becomes te, and it becomes plosive. At first this se by itself was fricative. Okay, at first it was a fricative se, but sometimes we have dissimilation. Why? Because this fricative se, which is similar to se and he and fe, and they had the similar manner of the same manner of articulation. They are fricative. And this which is fricative becomes t. It becomes two plosive sounds, and they were different from each other. They turns to different sound than its adjacent sound. In terms of manner of articulation, this suffix by itself is fricative. By its innate is fricative se, and it's become unsimilar to its adjacent sounds, which is fricative too. It becomes plosive, and we have dissimilation, which the sounds become unsimilar to its adjacent sounds, and we called it as dissimilation. Therefore, dissimilation is opposite to assimilation. In assimilation, the adjacent sounds want to be similar to each other, but in dissimilation, they want to be different from each other. Another matter in other phonological rules is lenition. Lenition literally means weakening. It generally refers to a reduction in the degree of structure in a sound. roughly along the scales of okay, this is scales which I want to explain for you. The scale in 14A varies by manner of articulation, while that in 14B involves glottal state. In lenition, we have a weakening. Okay, we want to continue our discussion about the lenition. Again, I give you a definition for lenition, which I told you that lenition means weakening, which is refer to the reduction in the degree of structure in a sound. For example, and here you can see the scales for lenition in this way. In terms of lenition, the stops are not lengths; they are tense. And when the stop sounds turns to flaps, they become weak, and we have lenition here. And flaps, when flaps turn to the fricative, we have lenition, and when fricative turns to approximant, we have lenition. And here it means this symbol stands for deletion, which the in deletion is a kind of lenition. Because in the lenition we want to have the we want to simplify the speech. Therefore, you should consider these scales when the stops turns to flaps, and flaps turn to fricatives, and fricative turns to approximant, and when we have a deletion, we consider them as a lenition process. Therefore, the fricatives are lengths than the flaps one, and the flaps are the lengths than the stops. Please pay attention to the order of these sounds. And here we have another type of lenition, which is according to the voiceless and voicelessness, voice and voiceless. Here it was in terms of we define lenition according to based on the manner of articulation, but here we define lenition based on the voice or voiceless sounds. Voiceless aspirated became when the voiceless aspirated turns to the plain voiceless, we have a lenition process, and when the plain voiceless turns to voiced one, we have the lenition again. Therefore, the voiceless aspirated are tense than the plain voiceless, and the voiced sounds are lengths than the voiceless aspirated sound. Please pay attention to these scales. They are very important, and according to them you can find that sound is length or tense. An example is the Spanish change illustrated in 26. You can refer to that, where voiced stop become approximant between vowels. One of the environment for the lenition process is intervocalic environment, or at the end of the word we have lenition too. Here in the between two vowels and at the end of the word, the lenition process is very common. This can be seen as a type of assimilation, where the stop assimilates to degree of structure of surrounding vowels. Another example is a process in Japanese known as rendako, by which a voiceless obstruent at the beginning of a word is voiced when that word is joined into the compound with a preceding vowel final word. We give some examples here. For example, we have here some sounds alone. Ori mean fall, kami mean paper, and tana mean shelf. And when we want to combine these two words with each other, we have the lenation process. For example, we want to combine this word ori with kami here. Ori with kami. Ori, we should have orikami when we want to combine them. We should have orikami, but here when these two sounds combine with each other, this k, which is the plosive sounds, and turns to ge, which here it is a voiceless sound. K is voiceless sound, turns to the voice sounds, which is ge, and we have lenation, because as I told you, when the plain voiceless turns to voice, we have a lenation process. Therefore, when k as plosive voiceless sounds turns to its voiced pair, we say that here we have lenation. Another example, when ori combined with kami and combined with tana, here we have two types of lenation. Origami, here k, which was the plosive voiceless sound, turns to its voiced pair. It turns to ge. And here we have tana, which turns to dana. It means that te, which was the voiceless dental or alveolar sounds, it turns to de, which is a voiced sound. When the voiceless sound turns and becomes the voiced sounds, we have lenation too. Here we have two lenation in this word. And when we add other words, which is sukuri, this se turns to ze, and again we have other types of lenation. In this word we have lenation process. The k turns to ge, which voiceless become the voiced sounds, which is lenation, which is less than the its voiceless pair. And here te turns to de, again we have lenation, and se turns to ze, again we have another type of lenation. Another example is the flapped allophone of English, which is te, illustrated in 31 here, which you can see it, this data in 31. Here a voiceless stop become a voiced flap. Voiceless stop become a voice flap. The voiceless are tense than the voiced one, and here itself is a lenation, and the stopped are tense than the flap. Here we have we have lenation in terms of the manner of articulation and in terms of voiceless and voice sound, thus advancing aligned voice scales in 13. Okay, you can see other example. For example, you can find the lenation in Arabic languages. I want you to read articles for finding other example. You should you should search the assimilation in Arabic languages, lenation in Arabic languages, or dissimilation in Arabic language. You should search them to find other example to learn it good. But you should memorize and you should know these skills. Another process, which is fruition, it is opposite of lenation, like the dissimilation, which was opposite to the assimilation. And here fruition again is the opposite form of the lenation, which is fruition, by which a sound is strengthened by moving to the left along the scales. Here, please pay attention to these scales. As I told you, when we go in this way, which the stops turns to flaps, flaps to fricatives, and fricatives to approximant and deletion. We say that it is lenition. And when the voiceless separated sound turns to the plain voiceless, and plain voiceless turns to the voice, we say that we have lenition here. But when we have we move from in this way, that we insert one sound, we have insertion. After that, when the approximant turns to the fricative, fricative becomes flaps, and flaps become stops, we say that here we can say that we have furtition. And when the voiced sound turns to the plain voiceless, and plain voiceless turns to the voiceless aspirated, we say that we have furtition, which is opposite to lenition. An example is the aspiration of English voiceless stops in a word initial position and before a stress vowel observed in 121 and 24. You can refer to this number and you can see the data for better understanding. Okay, as I told you, the lenition occurs at the beginning, at the end of the word, and the intervocalic or after the vowel in word. But furtition occurs at the word initial position and before the stress vowel. It is the common position for the furtition process. Another example occurs in some dialects of Spanish, such as Argentinian, where the glide ye, which is another name for glide, is approximant. Okay, when the glide ye is pronounced as je, which glide turns to the fricative ones, we have furtition at the beginning of the syllable. In such a word like you, which turns to ju, which is we have here furtition, because at the beginning of the word the glide sound turns to the fricative sounds. Ayer, which turns to azure, means yesterday. Days turns to leisure. And here you can see other example. Another process is insertion. Insertion or epenthesis is the addition of a segment, often to facilitate pronunciation. Insertion, which means, or epenthesis, another name for insertion is epenthesis, which is the addition of a segment, often to facilitate pronunciation. The productive morpheme for plural in English is phonologically z in words like dogs and cows. As we saw in section 2.7.1, this morpheme undergoes assimilation in words like cats. As I told you, here this word is se, and when it is adjacent to the voice sound, which is ge, it turns to its voiced pair, which is ze. And here we have dogs, and here we have cows, which is glide, and it becomes sonorant. And here we have cats, because t is voiceless sound, and here we keep the s form, the voiceless type of the se, which we pronounce it as cats. In words like horses, buses, bushes, churches, and judges, here we have insertion of e in this position, so that the plural morphemes has the shape is, because it is difficult to pronounce sequences like says. A vowel is inserted between this segment to make it easier and to ensure that the plural morpheme is clearly understood. The insertion of a vowel here affects the syllable structure, in fact, adding a syllable to the word. An insertion is given a formal expression in terms of phonological rule in this form. Here you can we can show the insertion in this way, which is opposite to deletion. Here I want to give you an example. According to the rule, when we want to write its rule, the rule of insertion, Here we should use this symbol, which I don't have that symbol here, and I put 0 instead of this symbol, which is a deletion, and it turns to I can't put other syllable, other symbols. It turns to, for example, I want arrow. We don't have the symbol in Notepad. Okay, I want to show you in this way. We don't have the IPA, I don't have IPA symbol in Notepad, and I am forced to use other symbol. Please consider this 0 instead of this symbol 0, which turns to, for example, A, which is one sound. Okay, in this, for example, I want to write this I want to write the rule of the insertion of EZ here. When we have CH and SH, for example, when we have N or C, we have some sound like, for example, consonant, and after that we have line at the end of the word. Here it is insertion. It is the rule of insertion according to this data. If I want to show you in exact way, that I can say that E he inserted. Okay, I should use this symbol instead of this one, which is E here, for the plural form of the C. We have this environment. After the C, you can use you can use this symbol. We have C after C at the end of the word. After Z, after SH, CH, and for example G, which we pronounce it as J. At the end of the, okay, and these symbols after this consonant at the end of the word. It is the rules for insertion in for these words. You can look at the insertion in Arabic language to better understanding. According to generative phonology, all of the matters which I explained for you were based on the generative phonology. Another matter is deletion, which is opposite of insertion. We delete some sounds. In French, many word final consonants are dropped if the following word begins with a consonant or at the end of the phrase. The word final consonant is retained before a vowel. Example of all three types are found in 32. Deletion is another way of dealing with difficult clusters of consonant. These are written in the format with in this way. For deletion, we use these symbols. For example, we have B, which is a sound, and become deleted. It is the rule of deletion. We have, this is the symbol of, for example, one word which deleted. I use 0 instead of deletion. For example, in this environment, it is the rule for deletion. Here we can see the French examples, which before the vowel we have petit ami, which before the vowel we have this consonant, which is petit, and we don't have any deletion. But here, before the consonant, the final consonant is deleted. Petit garçon, which here this final T is deleted. And here the phrase final. Il est petit means he is little. Here again we have the deleted form of petit at the end of the phrase and before the consonant. This final consonant is deleted, but at the when this final consonant follows by a vowel, we don't have any deletion. And here you can see other example. For example, gros ami, which we keep z, but here when after the consonant we have other consonant, we have the deleted form, we delete that consonant. Gros garçon, which the z sound here is deleted before the consonant. And here il est gros, again at the end of the phrase we are faced with the deleted form of z because it comes at the end of the phrase. Another example is for example troupe, étroit. Here because this p followed by vowel we keep it, but here trop large, here we face with the deleted form of trop, and at the end of the phrase again we have the deleted form of trop. Très étroit, it means that very narrow. Here we have z which followed by the vowel and we keep it, but here très large, we have the deleted, we delete that consonant because it followed by consonant. And très means very, which comes at the end of this word, we face with the deleted form of this. In some cases, there may be both deletion and insertion of the same segment. Sometimes in one segment we have both deletion and insertion. In some dialects of English, notably Southern British, RP, which I told you that RP means representational and Eastern narrow, here it just abbreviate the Southern British. And Eastern New England, R don't appear word finally or before another consonant in the same word as shown in the 33. Here I make a mistake. It is a phonetic form of the sounds. It is a representation of phonetic. Here we have, please pay attention to this data. We have bor, sor, fia, park, hama. Please pay attention to this data. In the British dialect, we delete this re at the end of this word. Ba, sa, fia, pa, homa at the end of the word and before the consonant. But here we have, when we add ing to these sounds, we have this re, bearing, sirring, fearing, hemorrhagic. Here, when we add a suffix which begins with vowel, that deleted re appear again, like this data. At the first column, at the first column, which is the representational, which is the phonetic form of this sounds. At the first column, we have the deletion of re, but here, after adding a suffix, which here is ing, we have the inserted form of that data. The data in 33 could be used to justify a rule deletion here in the environment at the end of the word and before the consonant. It means that end of the word and before the consonant. Other data of a similar source suggests that R may be inserted in some cases, like 44. For example, we have so. Sometimes we don't have a re in word, but we add it when we have some suffixes like ing and others. For example, here we have saw, but when we have sewing, we insert re in this sewing. Law and order, we have lower and lower under, lower and order. Here, after this law, because we have and, we insert the re, and here we insert re, but we don't have these sounds in the word when they are alone. Therefore, here we have insertion and here we have deletion. Therefore, this dialect would appear to need both insertion and deletion to account for this very similar phenomenon. For some discussion of the complexities involved, you can see this books McCurdy 1993 and Halle and 830 1997. Another matter is lengthening. In Russian, vowel length is allophonic. Stressed vowels are longer than the unstressed vowels. For example, the stressed u of Ruki. Okay. Lengthening, which is the opposite form of the lengthening, which is opposite to shortening. And I want to explain it for your next session. Therefore, in this session, I just explain these rules and assimilation, dissimilation, which I want you to read the articles about assimilation, dissimilations, and about the lenition and fortition, which fortition was opposite to lenition and dissimilation was opposite to assimilation. Fortition, lenition, deletion, and insertion, which deletion was opposed to insertion. And lengthening. I will explain lengthening in your next session. You can search the Arabic, the phonology of Arabic, and you can find them in this way. You can search the article by going to Google Scholar. Please follow these steps. Here I write the, for example, assimilation in Arabic. Here, instead of assimilation, you can write, for example, dissimilation. You can write deletion, flirtation, and others. But it is one way to find such articles. For example, those who have the PDF form of that article, you can download them. For example, I want to download this article, which is place assimilation in Arabic. And other, for example, is Arabic loan word in Tatar and Swahili, morphological assimilation. Assimilation in classical Arabic, a phonology study. Assimilation and local conjunction in Arabic. And for example, I want to find to search others. Lenation. By following these steps easily, you can find the phonological processes in your language, and you can see very example, and you can do these processes for your thesis. For example, here we have so many of the phonology processes in this language. Here, for example, assimilation and local conjunction in Arabic. By reading its abstract, you can understand what this article is about. I wanted to see it, and here you can see the consonant of this language, the consonant of in the language which they study. Here we can see the assimilation example in this language. It is according to the optimality theory. Okay, chronal cluster, velar cluster, you can see their example. It is based on the optimality theory, not generative theory. I explained to you this matter according to the generative Arabic, based on the generative approach. You should search in this way, based on the generative approach. For example, lenation based on the generative approach. Lenation, weakening and consonantal strength, tracing concepts through the history of phonology. It is based on the phonology. It is based on the generative approach, which we have some rules here. Okay. Here it explain for you the lenation. And we can see its rule. Please download the articles and read them to learn these processes according to the generative approach, generative phonology. I want to show you the example. It just explain these processes. Okay, here you can see the generative rules which they write the rule based on the distinctive features. For example, obstruent, which is the sound like p, become length or minus tense. You should learn such rule writing, which we will learn you them. Okay, please, and here you can see the rules. you should learn these features which I teach you. Okay, in this way, please download the articles and learn these processes in better way in your language. You can be familiar with these processes, and you can do researches based on these processes. These rules which I explain for you is based on the generative approach, not the optimality or others. Please read them and ask me your questions through the WhatsApp group.